I've always known I was an afterthought, from the moment I was born. My parents made it clear who the real star was. My older sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Kate was everything they wanted, charming, talented, and beautiful. And then there was me. The extra. The inconvenience. Growing up, it was small things at first: cake, getting the newest clothes while I wore hand-me-downs. My achievements barely acknowledged while hers were celebrated like Olympic victories. But over the years, the favoritism became something darker, something that carved a hole inside me. I remember my 10th birthday vividly. My parents had been too busy with Kate's college interviews to get me a cake, so they presented me with a leftover half of hers. Her name was still written in frosting. It's still cake. My mother had said DISMISSIVLY. It wasn't just birthdays. It was everything: school plays. Kate was always the lead, while I was cast in the background. My parents would sit front row, cheering, cameras flashing. The one time I got a small speaking role, they didn't even show up. They were too busy attending one of Kate's soccer matches. I once won a writing competition when I was 14. I came home, beaming, ready to share my news. But before I could even speak, Kate announced she had been named captain of the cheerleading squad. Suddenly, my accomplishment didn't matter. That night, my parents toasted to her future, never once acknowledging mine. I learned young that my worth was measured by how well I played the role they wanted. So, I tried. I tried to be Kate. I tried to make them proud. But it never worked. I was invisible. And when I started dating, I realized that invisibility carried into my relationships. 2. I met my boyfriend, Eric, in college. At first, he seemed different, attentive, sweet, the kind of guy who actually saw me. I had escaped my family's suffocating grip by moving across the country, determined to forge my own identity. For a while, it felt like I had. I threw myself into my studies, excelling in journalism, something my parents scoffed at. That's not a real career, my mother had said. Why can't you study something useful like law? Kate's husband is a lawyer, you know? But Eric made it better. He made me feel wanted, until he didn't. It started subtly. The way he would comment on other girls, the way his eyes lingered just a little too long on my roommate, Michelle. She was beautiful: tattoos, confidence, everything I wasn't. I ignored it at first. After all, guys look, right? But then, one night, everything changed. Michelle had gone to bed early. I had stepped out to help a friend in an emergency, leaving Eric alone in the apartment. When I returned, my stomach dropped. He was standing in Michelle's doorway. In his boxers, she was curled up on the floor, crying. When I demanded to know what had happened, he just stood there, silent. Michelle was the one who told me. He tried to get into her bed, whispering that I wouldn't have to know. When she pushed him away, he acted shocked, as if he truly believed she would say yes. I kicked him out that night, but it didn't stop there. The next morning, he sent me messages, gaslighting me. It wasn't a big deal, he said. Michelle overreacted. Our mutual friends, the same ones who had always defended him, started whispering that I was being too dramatic. I blocked him. But then, the ultimate betrayal. My parents found out. Not from me, but from Kate, who had somehow caught wind of the drama. Instead of support, I got judgment. You're overreacting, my mother had said. Men have needs, honey. Maybe you weren't giving him enough attention. I felt sick. Kate, ever the golden child, made her opinion clear. I don't know why you're acting like a victim. Maybe if you were more fun, he wouldn't have looked elsewhere. That was the moment something inside me cracked. For years, I had tolerated the neglect, the comparisons, the dismissals. But now they were excusing the man who had tried to cheat on me in my own home. I knew then I had to leave them behind. All of them. My plan was simple. A vacation, just me. Away from them, away from everything. I needed to breathe. So I booked a trip to a small beach resort, keeping it a secret. But, of course, my family had other plans. When I casually mentioned taking time off work for a trip, my mother's eyes lit up. That's perfect. We should all go. The twins would love the beach. The twins, Kate's kids. My permanent babysitting job. Before I could protest, she and Kate were already planning. You can take the boys swimming while Jack and I have some alone time, Kate added. As if it was just a given. They had hijacked my vacation. I was done. That night, I changed my flight. I booked a separate resort on an entirely different island. When they boarded their flight, expecting me to be with them, I was already in the air. heading somewhere they couldn't reach me. I turned off my phone. For the first time in my life, I was free. For the first time in my life, I woke up to silence. No demands, no last-minute babysitting. No guilt-tripping texts from my mother. No Kate stealing the spotlight. Just the gentle hum of the ocean outside my balcony and the faint scent of salt. In the air, I had made it. I stretched out in the bed that was mine alone, staring at the ceiling in disbelief. Was this what freedom felt like? It was intoxicating, terrifying. But then I turned my phone back on. Within seconds, the notifications poured in. Where are you? What the hell, Elizabeth? The twins are crying. Do you know how selfish you are? Mom? Called your job, and they said you took time off. You lied to us. Are you seriously skipping our family vacation? What is wrong with you, Kate, my mother? Even my father, the one who usually stayed out of our fights, had sent me a text simply saying, "This is unacceptable." I clenched my jaw. I knew the guilt trip would come. But it still stung, Daunt. And then there was a voicemail. My mother's voice was trembling, half anger, half manipulation. Elizabeth, I don't know what's gotten into you. This isn't how we raised you. Family comes first. Always. Call me back. I stared at my phone. Then, for the first time in my life, I blocked them all. I was done. The next few days were blissful. I spent mornings walking along the shore, afternoons reading on a hammock, and evenings watching the sunset with a cocktail in my hand. No demands. No obligations. Just me. But the thing about running away from your past is that it always finds you. On the third day, I was at a beachside cafe when I got a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Call me. Eric, my stomach dropped. How? Did he still have access to me? I had blocked him on everything. A second later, another text. I know you're ignoring me. Don't. It's important. I should have deleted it. I should have ignored it. But, against my better judgment, I replied. There's nothing to talk about. Leave me alone. His response was instant. Fine. Just know that Michelle isn't the only one I was with. I figured you'd rather hear it from me. I froze, my fingers hovered over the keyboard. What the hell are you talking about? Kate, my heart stopped. Liar. But then he sent a picture. A blurry, low-lit photo of Kate, in his apartment. In a sweatshirt I recognized as mine. I shot up from my seat, my vision tunneling. The world around me blurred. No, this wasn't possible. Kate had always belittled me, sure, but would she? My breath hitched as another message came through. She told me everything. How you always played the victim. How you were a clingy, desperate loser. How your family would always pick her over you. She said you'd get over it. The cafe felt like it was closing in on me. I shoved my phone in my bag, barely remembering to pay before stumbling onto the sand, the ocean stretching endlessly before me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something. But all I could do was stare at the horizon, numb. Had I truly meant that little to them? Even after everything, after a lifetime of being cast aside, I had still believed there was some line Kate wouldn't cross. Some limit to my mother's coldness. But I had been wrong. They had destroyed every last piece of me. And now, standing here in paradise, away from them, I had never felt more alone. That night, I made a choice. I wasn't going to go back to them. Ever. I wasn't going to give them another chance to humiliate me, so I took out my journal and made a list. Find a new apartment, change my phone number, cut them out completely. I was done trying to earn their love. If I was going to rebuild my life, it was going to be without them, and for the first time, I felt something close to peace. When I landed back home, I didn't go to my apartment. I went straight to my landlord's office. I need to break my lease, I said, my voice steady but firm. The older woman behind the desk raised an eyebrow. That's sudden. I'll pay whatever I need to. I need to move. She gave me a long look, then sighed. All right. I'll send over the paperwork. 2 hours later, I was shoving my belongings into suitcases. Every picture of my family went straight into the trash. I blocked my mother, my father, my sister again, in case they found new ways to reach me. Then I changed my number. I wasn't just cutting ties. I was burning the bridge, the land beneath it, and the whole damn map. And then I made one last decision. I bought a motorcycle. It wasn't brand new, just an old second-hand Honda, but it was mine. It was my freedom. I could go wherever I wanted. No more answering to anyone. No more playing the role of the extra in my own life. I should have felt liberated. But freedom is a funny thing. When you've spent your whole life fighting to be seen, to be loved, to be enough, the silence that follows is almost deafening. The worst discovery of Allie had barely settled into my new apartment when I got a text from an unknown number. Check your sister's Instagram. I almost deleted it. But something in me, maybe instinct, maybe self-destruction, made me type her name into the search bar. The first post I saw made my blood run cold. Finally got my dream bike. Thanks, Mom and Dad. And there she was, sitting on my motorcycle, the one I had paid for. The one I had left in my parents' garage. The one I was supposed to pick up after my move. I felt physically sick. They had stolen it. My parents, the same. People who had refused to help me with college, who had dismissed my successes, who had always put Kate above me, and now they had given her my property like I never existed. I clenched my phone so hard my knuckles went white. I had already lost my family. But now, they had taken the last thing that was truly mine. I called my sister. She picked up on the third ring, sounding irritated. "Oh, you actually called? What? Are you still mad about the vacation thing?" I didn't even bother with small talk. "Where the hell is my bike?" she scoffed. "Relax, Mom and Dad gave it to me. You don't need it anymore." I was shaking. It wasn't theirs to give. Kate sighed dramatically. "You're married now. You don't need a bike. Don't be petty." I could feel the rage bubbling inside me, the years of neglect, the constant belittling, the sheer entitlement that radiated from her voice. I gritted my teeth. "Give it back." She laughed. She actually laughed. "Oh my God, you're so dramatic. It's just a stupid bike. Get over it." I hung up, and then I called a lawyer. Taking them to court, it turns out, even when your own family treats you like a disposable object, the law doesn't. I owned that bike. I had proof, receipts, registration, everything, and I was done letting them take things from me, so I filed a legal demand for them to return it. At first, they ignored it. Then when my lawyer followed up, my father called me for the first time in months. "Are you seriously taking us to court over a motorcycle? I paid for it. It's mine." He sighed heavily, like I was the disappointment again. "Don't be selfish, Elizabeth." I felt my stomach twist. I had heard those words my whole life. Every time they had dismissed my feelings. Every time they had chosen Kate over me. Every time I had tried to stand up for myself. "Not this time. I am being selfish." "Ah," said voice steady. "Because you never taught me how to be anything else." Silence. Then he muttered, "If you go through with this, you know what it means." I almost laughed. I know exactly what it means. And I did. They would cut me off. Fully. This time, no more guilt trips, no more expectations, no more pretending they cared about me. All I had to do was let go. So I did. I went through with a lawsuit, and 3 weeks later, my bike was back in my possession. The final goodbye expected. My parents, too, show up at my door, demanding answers. Instead, they went silent. No calls. No texts. Even Kate stayed quiet. But then, one night, my mother left me a voicemail. Her voice was shaking. "You win. Are you happy now? The family is broken because of you." I stared at my phone, heart hammering. Then, I deleted the message. Because, for the first time in my life, I was happy. They had stolen my childhood, my confidence, my peace, but they weren't going to steal my future. Not anymore. I turned off my phone, grabbed my keys, took my bike for a ride. The road stretched ahead of me, endless and full of possibility. I had no destination, no obligations, just the wind in my hair, the engine humming beneath me, and the undeniable truth that I had finally left them behind. For the first time in my life, I felt weightless. No family suffocating me, no sister looming over me, no mother weaving guilt into every conversation. Just the open road, the hum of the motorcycle beneath me, and the knowledge that I had won. But peace never lasts, does it? The past always finds you. It was about a month later when the first sign of trouble appeared. A letter from a lawyer. First, I thought it was something related to my parents, maybe some petty last attempt to guilt me back into their orbit. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a custody summons. My ex, Eric, was taking someone to court, but not me. My ex was involved in a custody battle with his new wife, and they were trying to force his child, to be raised in his way. I hadn't spoken to Eric since the moment I had thrown him out of my life, but something about this didn't sit right. A part of me wanted to ignore it. But another part? Another part knew exactly what it was like to be manipulated by family. So, against my better judgment, I made a call. The confession that changed everything. Michelle picked up on the second ring. Her voice was wary. Elizabeth. I swallowed. I know it's random, but I saw something about Eric. Is everything okay? Silence. Then she let out a bitter laugh. I guess you really don't know. Know what? Eric's wife is my sister. My blood turned to ice. Michelle continued, her voice laced with exhaustion. When you kicked him out, he moved on real fast. Married my sister within 6 months. Now they have a baby, and she inhaled sharply. He's forcing her to cut people out of her life, just like he did to you. I gripped the phone tighter. I saw him for what he was, I whispered. Why didn't she? Michelle sighed. Because some people don't see the knife until it's already in their back. I closed my eyes. I had spent my entire life being manipulated, guilt-tripped, pushed into the shadows, and Eric was still doing it. But this time, I had a choice, and I wasn't going to stay silent. The fight begins next morning. I went to court. Not for myself, for her. I wasn't family. I had no legal reason to be there. But when I walked into that courtroom and locked eyes with Eric for the first time since that night he had betrayed me, I saw the flicker of recognition, and then I saw fear. I sat quietly in the back, but Michelle's sister, Eric's wife, noticed me. She didn't say anything at first, but as the judge called for a recess, she approached me. Why are you here? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated. Because I know what he is. Her eyes darted to the side. Eric was staring, his face pale. You don't have to do this alone, I added. I know what it feels like to be isolated. For the first time, she looked at me not with suspicion, but with something else. Hope, and that was when I knew. I had been fighting for myself for so long, but now I had a chance to fight for someone else. To dot the breaking point. Court battles are long, ugly things. But with Michelle, her sister, and even me standing as witnesses to Eric's pattern of control, he was losing. For the first time in his life, he was losing control, and he hated it. One night, after a long day in court, I got a message. You should have stayed out of this. I exhaled. And then? I laughed because for the first time, I wasn't afraid anymore. Eric had spent years trying to twist reality. Gaslight people, make them question themselves. But not me. Not anymore. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked him. And this time, it was for good. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting against the people who had used and discarded me. Eric, my parents, my sister, all of them had spent years making me feel small. But now I was standing in the fire and I wasn't burning. Eric loses everything. The custody battle dragged on for weeks. Eric's usual tricks, manipulation, fake charm, twisting reality, were useless against the hard evidence we brought. The judge saw through him. His own wife saw through him. And the final nail in the coffin, Michelle's testimony. She sat on that stand, looking directly at Eric, and said, he tried to cheat on Elizabeth with me. And when I rejected him, he told me she didn't matter. He told me she was replaceable. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Eric's face turned red, his fists clenched, and in that moment, I saw it, the moment he realized he had finally lost control. When the ruling came down, Eric was denied any decision-making over the child's upbringing. His wife, she was granted sole custody. The moment court adjourned, I walked out with Michelle. And her sister. We didn't say much at first. Then Michelle smirked. That was satisfying. I exhaled, a laugh bubbling up in my throat. Yeah, it really was. For the first time in years, I felt free. My parents' last dandy had cut my parents off. Or at least, plasticity has a way of crawling back in one evening just as I was settling into my new life. My mother showed up at my door. I stared at her through the peephole for a long time before finally opening it. She looked older, more tired. You have a lot of nerve coming. Here, I said flatly. She sighed, pressing her lips together. Elizabeth, we need to talk. I crossed my arms. About what? How you stole my bike. How you always put Kate first. Or how you never actually gave a damn about me. She flinched, but didn't back down. Your father is sick. I froze. What? She exhaled shakily. Cancer. Stage 3. And Kate can't handle it alone. Ah, there it was. This wasn't about reconciliation. This wasn't about making things right. This was about me being the backup plan. I let out a humorless laugh. So you need me now. After all these years, her eyes brimmed with tears. We're family, Elizabeth. No, I whispered. We're not. Her lip trembled. How can you say that? I swallowed the lump in my throat. God, it hurt. But I wasn't going to be manipulated again, because family isn't just blood. I said, my voice steady. Family is the people who show up for you, who love you unconditionally, who don't make you feel like you have to earn their love. She inhaled sharply. So that's it. You're just going to abandon us. I met her gaze head on. You abandoned me a long time ago. And then I did what I should have done years ago. I closed the door. Kate's meltdown if. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, Kate called. I let it go to voicemail. But when I listened, my stomach twisted. She was screaming, "You are a selfish, ungrateful B***TCH. She spat. You're actually going to let Dad die without even trying to make things right. You're a disgusting person, Elizabeth. No wonder nobody wants you. I clenched my fists. Once upon a time, that would have broken me. But now I just felt tired. I deleted the voicemail, and that was the last time I ever heard my sister's voice. The turning point weeks passed, and then something strange happened. My father never reached out. Not once, my mother begged. My sister raged. But him, silence. And that's when I realized he had never fought for me. Not once. He had let my mother steamroll me my entire life. He had let Kate take everything. And now? Now he was doing nothing. And for the first time, I saw the truth. I had spent years chasing my father's approval, and he had never even bothered to look for me. I had grieved for a relationship that had never actually existed. And so, one evening, I went for a ride, just me and my bike. The wind in my hair, the road stretching ahead. And I let go of all of it. The past, the pain, the need for closure that would never come. I was done, and God, it felt good. I used to believe that if I fought hard enough, if I just tried harder, my family would finally see me, that they would love me the way I had always loved them, that if I just held on a little longer, they would change. But the truth is, some people never change, and that's okay, because I had finally changed myself. The final would be 3 months after my mother showed up at my door. I got an email from my father's lawyer. My father had passed away. I stared at the screen, waiting for something. A rush of grief, a pang of regret, a sign that I had made the wrong choice by cutting them off. But all I felt was nothing. The lawyer's email was short and impersonal. Your father left you nothing in his will. I blinked, not a dime. It's not a keepsake, nothing. Not that I wanted his money, but it was the final proof that I had never truly been part of their world. I was never his daughter, not in the way Kate was. And yet, for the first time, it didn't break me. It set me free. Kate's last word, 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. Dad is gone. I hope you're happy, you heartless B***KG. I exhaled slowly. Then, I blocked the number. Kate wasn't really angry that I had cut them off. She was angry that I had escaped, that I had walked away from the cycle of manipulation and abuse that she still clung to. And that wasn't my problem anymore. Choosing my own family didn't have a funeral to attend. I didn't have a house full of grieving relatives expecting me to perform my grief like a well-trained daughter. Instead, I spent that evening with people who actually loved me. Michelle, her sister, my in-laws who had become more like parents to me than my own ever had, and my best friend, Maya, who had been by my side through everything. We sat around my tiny apartment, eating pizza, drinking wine, and talking about the future, not the past. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, I realized I wasn't alone. I never had been. I had just spent too long looking for love in the wrong places. Letting go a few weeks later, I sold my childhood home. It had technically been mine, left to me in my grandmother's will, though my parents had conveniently never told me about it. I never stepped foot inside it again. I didn't need to. I let the real estate agent handle everything. I signed the papers, and then I walked away. Literally, I took my motorcycle out for a ride that evening, and as the wind hit my face, I felt something shift. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't escaping. I was just moving forward. A future without. Themi won't lie and say it didn't hurt. There were nights. I still dreamed of my father actually fighting for me, of my mother choosing me for once, of my sister apologizing. But those were just dreams, and the truth was, I had already won because I was free, because I was happy, because I was enough without them. Epilogue, the last message on, year later. I got one final email from Kate. I guess you really meant it. You're never coming back. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already left, and I wasn't ever looking back. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought, or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments side. Love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.